Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on our YouTube channel. My name is Madison, and I'm the director of Peace Restored. We are a nonprofit organization that works with women that have been through various difficult life experiences, and we focus on the topic of abuse, trauma, and grief. So again, welcome and thank you for joining us today. If you like the content that we provide here on our YouTube channel, we would encourage you to like and subscribe to our channel so you've been notified when new videos are produced, and you'll be able to follow us and see what topics we're working on each month. Last month we did a series on encouragement, and this month we are working on a series on stress. So if you've been watching our videos, you'll see that we've given you some content or information from a mental health and from a spiritual standpoint of how do we deal with stress, how do we walk through those different avenues. And then today we're going to be applying it to more of a practical standpoint of how do we practically apply those and take those ideas we've been talking about and put those into application in our everyday life. And so I'd like to introduce you guys to Taylor Carnes. She's been with us here on the channel before, and she's with us on staff as well at Peace Restored. So Taylor, thank you for joining us today. And if you'd like to tell me a little bit about yourself again, that would be great.
Thank you for having me. I have been around Peace Restored for about 2.5 years, and I just joined staff recently, and that has been kind of crazy as we figured out what my role is and what other people's role are as they join staff. It's been fun getting to know everybody that is involved with Peace Restored and just being more behind the scenes now.
Good. Well, we're excited to have you with us and all the changes that's going on and the adjustments we're making with Peace Restored to be able to serve better and to serve a wider audience. So it's been exciting to watch. So as I said, today our topic is on stress. I know that's something I can relate with, and I think it's probably something all of us can relate to, is the topic of stress. And if you probably said you don't know what stress is, well, I probably have to venture to say you're lying. So, because stress is just something we have every day. And so why don't you start out and talk to us a little bit about your perspective on the topic of stress?
Whenever I think of stress, I tend to start thinking of stressors and not what stress is or anything. My mind immediately just goes to things that cause stress, whether it's from something you don't have or something you can't control, like losing your job or your health or even your marriage or your finances or things like that. Those are stressors, and that's where my mind tends to go. It never really goes to this is what stress is, and it always goes to the cause.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we talked about in other videos is the difference between stress and stressors, right? So stress is what we feel, and stressors are kind of the things that cause the stress or the outside experiences. And so you mentioned a couple of those: job loss, being married itself is a stressor. I mean, it could be and stress, we have to remember, is a positive and a negative. And so I don't want people to listen to say, oh, she's saying all marriage is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, stress is what I think God uses that in our lives. He can use it if we allow it to help us find growth. And so stressors can be a good thing, just depending on the extent of that. So you mentioned job loss, and that's probably something that we can think about a lot today in our current environment, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people losing their job, or even if people didn't lose their job changed in some capacity, which could be a stressor for them, even if they don't think so or don't realize it.
Yeah, exactly. So their environments change. Their maybe the position, maybe they're working from home. Maybe they've had to find a new career, or maybe they've gotten laid off right now. So there's all kinds of things that could be happening that's causing that stressor in their life right now to maybe bring some pressure on them. But yeah, so are there other types of outside stressors that you can think of that or how those affect other things in our lives. Maybe not, so if we have this job loss, or does it just affect just that job loss, or is it kind of a cyclical pattern, would you say?
It definitely, I think the job loss definitely starts a spiral uh, where, so you lose your job, and that immediately impacts your finances, whether it's a huge stressor or it's pretty minor. You have bills that are still coming in and you lost that income, and then as that stressor starts to happen, I think something we talked about is that there's a difference between stress and anxiety, and anxiety can start to build. When that anxiety starts to build, it can cause a stress on your marriage because you're at home. Whether maybe you can't find a job now and your finances are still kind of out of whack because of that, and you start thinking your spouse sees you in a different light, something they may not have actually expressed out loud, but something you feel internally, which is more anxiety than stress, but it can cause stress in your marriage where you start to blow up at your spouse, or you start to ignore them, or um, things like that just kind of start to happen. And then even as that starts to happen, your marriage is a huge part of your life. And as that starts to become more stressful, that can take a toll on your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional health. In whatever ways that looks like, that can be all kinds of different things, but it definitely causes a spiral.
Yes, that's for sure. Yeah, like you were talking about that anxiety coming in, is that stressors the outside experience, and then what we choose, how we choose to respond to that is how anxiety can manifest. And so sometimes it's what we tell ourselves internally. We might have these thoughts where we tell ourselves, I'm never going to get a job again, or I'll never replace that income, or um, I might starve. What if I can't feed my family? What if? And so there's this huge list of what ifs, isn't there? And if we focus on those what ifs, then that anxiety can increase. So in some of our other videos, we talked about maybe some techniques that we could use to help us through those moments when the anxiety begins to build, so that way we can be in control of our feelings instead of our feelings controlling us. So could you mention a couple of those and maybe describe those to our audience?
So, the first thing I want to talk about is the breathing technique that, if you saw Noelle's video, she shared, which is it's a 4 count breathing technique. And basically, what you do is you inhale for 4 counts, and then you hold it for 4 counts, and you exhale. And something I think that one's really easy, because I say easy, but because it's something you probably do without realizing it. Not necessarily that like pointed, but when you get stressed out, I think people tend to sigh or breathe deeply. And something you can do is train your body to, instead of respond with that deep breathing that you do just unconsciously, you can start training your body to do the 4 count breathing when you start to feel that stress. Plus, it's something that you can do in front of other people. It's not something you have to get away to do. Like, you lose your job, pretty immediately you can start doing that breathing exercise, and no one's even going to notice that you're doing it, and it can start calming your body down as you figure out what your next steps are.
That's really good because, like you mentioned, that there's probably some things that we do automatically and we don't even realize it. And so I think going back again, God gives us these innate abilities to be able to calm ourselves, and we don't realize we're using those. And so, like you mentioned, some people will do that deep sigh where they just take those deep breaths. Other people, when they get stressed, though, they'll actually forget to breathe. And so it sounds funny because we're like, well, how can you forget to breathe? We need, but it's just because they become kind of frozen or stuck in that moment. So using that breathing technique that you mentioned on either side of that fence, if you will help you be able to continue to stay present, to be able to process through whatever that stressor is, so you can then be able to get on the other side of it. So it's really good. Is there another technique that you'd like to share with us?
The progressive muscle relaxation technique. I really like this one because she said something that was like, when you have an anxious mind, you can't have a calm body.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that because if you calm your body down, you can calm your mind down as well. And it's the progressive muscle relaxation is has a lot to do with you just noticing your body, and kind of like this one you have to be a little bit more conscious about, but it's something you can practice and it can be second nature. But where you notice your body, you notice your breathing becoming shallow or heavier, or your heart rate's going up, you feel that your shoulders tense, and you just kind of notice that tension and you relax your shoulders, and then you scan your body down and you relax each muscle like very, very consciously. And as you calm your body down, you should start to feel your mind calming down a little bit. Even if the stressor doesn't go away in that moment, you can have a calm mind, a calm body, and that creates space for you to clear your head and know what your next steps are.
That's great. Yeah, because that's another thing that we do automatically without even realizing it. Our body will tense up. And if we can start to recognize in ourselves, what does my body do when I have a stressor or I feel the anxiety rising in me? How does my body respond? Because I'll tell you, your body will always respond. And so you just have to learn that. Because you might think, well, my body doesn't do anything. You may just do it so often that you don't realize that you're doing it. And so the more you pay attention, like you said, you mentioned some great ones, tightening of your shoulders. Some people get knots in their stomach. They tense up. They might clench their jaws. So you mentioned a lot of great ones, and learning to intentionally practice that, so that practice calming your body will be key to helping you calm your mind as well. Those are really great. And so those are ways that we can practically apply into our lives to where we can learn new tools and new techniques to where we can process through that stressors or anxiety, stress, however you want to call it today, and to help us through that. So when we think about other tools that we can use from a spiritual standpoint, what might be a good tool that we could use there?
I like personally the idea of a quiet space,
Mm.
but I am aware that that's really, really hard for people to find in our world because there's a lot of demands that need to be met. But quiet space doesn't actually have to be quiet. Like your surroundings don't have to be quiet. I personally know a woman, she had kids who were probably all under 7. And something she would do when they were little was she would put her head down on the kitchen table, and it was probably like 5 minutes, it wasn't long. And she would have that space with God. Nothing distracted her. And the kids knew not to bother her. Like that was something that her and her husband had set in place prior, was that when mom has her head down on the kitchen table, you do not bother her. No matter what it is, unless it's life or death, you don't bother her. And she consciously decided she was going to have that space with the Lord and get that quiet space in her head, even though nothing around her was quiet. She had kids under 7. There's no way it was quiet. And but that was something that Noelle shared too, was that to use stressors as a challenge and not a threat. And I think with that example of her just using that quiet space, that was an example of her using it as a challenge. Like, I have these kids and the world is telling me I have all these demands to be met. I'm never going to have the time with the Lord until they're 18 years old again. And that wasn't true. And her and her husband talked about that and made sure that wasn't true for her.
Yeah, that's really great. I like what you just said it there at the end, is focusing in on the truth of our reality instead of what we tell ourselves are sometimes starkly different. And so because she was able to focus in on the truth is, I can really provide a quiet space in this time, even though it's not going to look the same as somebody else's quiet space, maybe someone who's retired and lives, just there and their husband at home. Their quiet space is going to probably physically be quiet, and they might actually have a room that they just sit in. But for her right now, that quiet space was just sitting in her kitchen, having a quiet moment just with her and the Lord while the kids ran around, and probably some days ran around crazily. And so that's just the reality of life. So I think that's a really great advice is how do we find those quiet moments in the midst of whatever our current existence is? And so it's not putting ourselves in this box if you want to say, well, I can't, or it's not possible. It's focusing on what is the truth of our reality and then walking through that. So it's really great. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today on our channel to talk a little bit more about stress and how we can walk through it. You gave some really great tips and tools and elaborated a little bit on some of the things we talked about in our other videos. And I really appreciate that. So hopefully these are things that you are able to take and apply to your life, where you can, whether it's practicing and applying breathing techniques for muscle relaxation, or I'd probably say most importantly, just spending time with the Lord and just being in His presence and finding that calm with Him. And so we just want to encourage you to take time to do that and just continue to make that a part of your daily practice. So if you have enjoyed the content you've been watching on our YouTube channel, again, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and also just share the videos that we're producing. You never know who they might be helpful for and are helpful to help them through whatever they're going through. If you'd like more information about Peace Restored, if you'll just go to our website, which is peacerestored.net, you can find all kinds of information there about us. And we'll link some more information for you about us, of our different videos and different resources down in our links below. So again, thank you. I hope you guys have a blessed day.